Revelation 2870. From the 6th of September 1943. Achieving the Sonship of God. The final purpose of earthly life is the attainment of the degree of maturity which earns the human being childship to God. Few people, however, live so consciously that their entire striving is only directed towards this final goal. For continued service in love must shape the human being in such a way that he can also continue to receive God's emanation of love, which guarantees the soul's constant progress and finally brings it that degree of maturity that it can enter the spiritual kingdom as a true child of God, that it is now entitled to all child rights and that it can create and shape in godlike will for its own happiness. Childship to God is the highest goal, and every human being is given the opportunity to reach this goal, but it requires the human being's entire will, which must be turned towards God. It requires a putting aside of all earthly desires, an overcoming of all earthly cravings. It requires a constant union with God through active neighborly love and an everlasting desire for Him, which impels the human being to diligent soul work, to a pleasing way of life and which makes his heart receptive for the deepest wisdom from God. It requires an uninterrupted work of love which shapes his heart in such a way that God Himself can take abode in him and the most intimate union with Him already takes place on earth. Childship to God triggers an inconceivable feeling of happiness in the soul. It is the most glorious thing a human being can achieve. And yet, it is striven for so little because the first condition is to renounce earthly goods and pleasures. But the human being's strength and will are often insufficient and he makes too little use of the power of prayer. What he seriously wants he can also achieve as soon as he sincerely asks for it and does not slacken in his prayer. The supply of strength will never be denied to him as long as his will earnestly strives for it. In order to achieve childship to God it is also necessary to feel contact with the God-connected forces. That is, the human being must willingly open himself to all good spiritual currents. He must be in constant readiness to receive. Thus through thinking turned towards God he must let the thought currents from the spiritual kingdom take effect on him, as a result of which he will receive increased strength and light, which will result in a safe maturing. The will to come close to God releases the soul from earth, from matter, and gives it free development. It is not hindered in its flight upwards, and this is already a connection to spiritual bearers of light. The soul often dwells in the spiritual kingdom and the desire for God becomes ever stronger in it. And its activity of love on earth is correspondingly. Consciously striving upwards and deep, heartfelt love for God shape the human being's soul on earth such that it can leave it as a child of God in order to take up the Father's inheritance. In order to be able to behold God face to face. Amen.